Chapter 31. A Remarkable Portrait. "From the moment she was born, my father spoiled Rihanna in every sense of that word," said Captain Sangra. "He gave her the best tutors, the finest clothes, a generous allowance. He set her and her mother up in a nice manor house outside Anlang. Rihanna and I even went to the university together, though at the time I was told she was a distant cousin, not a half-sister. Everything I had, she had, except for two things, a lineal and our name. I realized long ago that combination, showering her with gifts while denying her worth, twisted her into the person she is now." The wide gaze had gone from Sangra's eyes. Her words were calm and measured. "I know how easy it is to be charmed by her, Sai. She charmed all of us at school, teachers and students alike. The day she told me she was my half-sister, I felt like the luckiest person in Mqpmaker. For years, I did anything Rihanna asked of me, anything to see her smile. But slowly, things changed between us. She has a terrible taste for gambling, and I have given that girl a fortune to pay off her debts. But it was never enough. The more money I gave her, the more she needed. I soon realized that no matter what I did, she would never stop asking me for more." The captain ran her finger under the links of her necklace. "I begged my father to bestow the Sangra name on Rihanna. I even offered to give her links from my own lineal. It's just a name, just a stupid piece of jewelry. But he refused. I'm sure he knew that my great-aunt, our beloved queen, would never allow us to break with tradition." I held on to a wooden beam in the center of the room to keep my footing against the rolling of the ship. The rocking motion and the captain's slow, steady words made me feel like I was in a dream. "But what about her lineal of honor?" I asked. Sangra rolled her eyes. "For her act of great bravery? That was Rihanna's first real battle. Our father had made sure she was under my command so I could keep an eye on her. But that fool wouldn't listen to me. She wanted to be in the thick of things, earn some fame for herself." The captain mimed, swinging a sword through the air. "She stepped in the way of one of my own officers who nearly took her head off. I wrote the report that was sent to the queen. I made up the story that she had saved my life because I hoped that having a lineal of her own would satisfy her. But my sister will never be satisfied." Sangra looked up at me, her eyes heavy. "She hates me for having what she can never have. She doesn't understand that I'd give it all away if I could." Sangra went on. "I never wanted Rihanna on this expedition. I know how reckless she is, how hungry she is to earn a name for herself. I tried everything I could to stop her from coming, but in the end, she found a way to force my hand." The captain beckoned me to come closer to her desk. I hung back. She tilted her head at me. "Still afraid I'm contagious? Child, if I had Listrus, I'd be dead by now. Unless you lick that poison off the floor, I promise that you won't catch my illness." I remembered that day on deck when Rihanna had insisted on caring for Sangra herself. That would have made it easy for her to slip something into the little brown bottle. The image I held in my mind of Miss Rihanna was disintegrating bit by bit, like paper melting into the sea. I walked slowly to the captain's desk. Sangra unlocked the top door and pulled out a little black case, a picture frame. When she looked down at the portrait, she broke into a wide smile. I had never seen her show a genuine smile before. I noticed for the first time she had a deep dimple in her left cheek. "We met when I was stationed in Amnaj," she said wistfully, "just after I had made captain. I loved him from the very start." She turned the frame around. In the portrait, a young Captain Sangra stood wrapped in the embrace of a handsome man in uniform. His dark curls hung down over his broad shoulders, but it was the bold look in his gaze that made my breath catch. Light eyes. Beau's eyes. Captain Sangra coughed and reached up to her collar. "He wanted to marry me, but I wouldn't do it. If anyone found out, I'd be cast out of our family. No, it would never do for the great niece of the Mqpmaker queen to marry a commoner from Amnaj." I stood so close now that I could see the tiny royal stamps on the thick golden links of her lineal. She leaned to the side and rubbed her neck as if it ached to carry the weight. She unclasped her top button, and I saw that she wore another necklace underneath the lineal, a white shell with dark red markings strung on a piece of twine. The captain put the picture back in her desk drawer. We had a child, a little boy. After he was born, I was called back to Mqpmaker to command the Prosperity. It had been easy enough to hide my pregnancy, but I couldn't hide a baby on a warship. I left him with my husband and promised to come back. But the war kept going on, and then Amnaj was sacked. My husband and his entire squadron were killed. His aunt took the baby and fled to Pattaya Island. For years I sent her money and kept up with her through letters. I was desperate to get back to my son, but the war always kept me away. Sangra's words grew more rushed and frantic as her story went on. I had plans to bring him back to Anlung where I could keep him close, but hide him from my family. A coward's plan, I know, she said bitterly. I thought this expedition would give me the perfect opportunity to retrieve him. But then, 2 months before we set sail, the aunt's letters stopped. I searched for both her and my son when we docked at Pattaya, but I couldn't find them. They had disappeared. I remembered how anxious Captain Sangra had been the morning we dropped anchor at Pattaya Island. I also remembered the devastated look on her face when we departed. I had never told the aunt my real name, said Sangra. I was too afraid that if someone found out, they would use it against me. In the end, it didn't matter. Someone found out anyway. Rihanna? I whispered. She nodded. Rihanna threatened to tell the queen about my son and that I was never married. She said that unless I gave her a place on this expedition, she would ruin me and ruin his future. I played her game for so long because I was afraid of what I could lose. But now I see that none of it matters. It's as if I dialed a scope into focus, and for the first time I can see everything clearly. A brief smirk flashed on her lips. I suppose that's one good thing about being poisoned into a delirious fever. The ship creaked loudly as it rocked back and forth. Captain Sangra sat still and wooden and looked up at me with eyes as dark as the sea. I'm done playing along with Rihanna, and I don't care what the queen thinks of me anymore. I have served her all these years without question, and what has it been for? So that we could make Mqpmaker into a great empire? An empire of cowards and thieves. That's what we are. Sai, I don't care if we are 100 yards from finding the Sunderlands. I'm turning the ship around to go back for my son, and no one, not Rihanna, not our queen, can stop me this time. My head spun from everything I'd just been told. Captain, what's your son's name? Amanat, she said softly, after his father, but I called him Bo. Shouting erupted outside. The door of the cabin slammed open. It was Dr. Pinching. Black soot covered her face. Down below, in the galley, she panted. Fire!